Multiple messages we have gotten that say, what happened to Ole Miss last night? Hold that thought. We're going to start there in the 4 o'clock hour. Was it just a case of that's baseball? Or is there something that is more concerning with the now number 1 ranked team in the country? I do want us to go back, making good on my promise to circle back to the Kermit Davis, Ole Miss, Keith Carter conversation, the press release, etc. Borky and I kind of went back and forth on the press release. There was a particular paragraph in it that Borky thought was completely unnecessary and took attention away from it. I honestly didn't believe it. Like, I was reading the press release because I knew we needed to talk about it on the show. But frankly, all I wanted to see was a couple of quotes. Like, all of the other word salad that was in there meant nothing to me. I wanted to know what Keith Carter said. I wanted to know what Kermit Davis said. And I feel like that's probably how most people feel about it. But you kind of got to justify the media relations guy that writes it. And they're going to put a lot of extra words and numbers and stats and scores and all of those things in it to try and, bolster it and make it more readable. I don't know that was necessary, but it was. We'll talk about that in just a second. To me, the overwhelming thing that matters in that press release, and you got to put your investigative hat on just a little bit. You got to look at this thing with a little bit more than just, Ole Miss says it's supporting Kermit Davis. They do. Keith Carter says he believes in Kermit Davis. He's had success all throughout his career. But again, 1 paragraph, 3 sentences, I think, from Keith Carter, NCAA tournament mentioned 2 times. 1 paragraph, 4 or 5 sentences from Kermit Davis, NCAA tournament mentioned 2 times. That is not an accident. Keith Carter made it clear to Kermit Davis, you got to get to the tournament. Kermit Davis understands explicitly he's got to get to the tournament. They talked about a lot of stuff, right? They talked about injuries. They talked about close losses. They talked about team chemistry. They talked about roster rebuilding and transfer portal and style of play and all of those things. And you know what? All of that's good and well. And all of that is going to have an impact on whether or not you ultimately get to the point of NCAA tournament or no NCAA tournament. Because that is what is going to determine whether, following the 22-23 season, Kermit Davis continues as the head basketball coach at Ole Miss, or the Rebels are searching for a new coach. Period.
So let me ask you this. I mean, I don't know who they're going to, obviously they're going to hit the portal. They'll find a guy here or there. Is this team going to the tournament next year, or are you just delaying the inevitable?
I don't think you can answer that question in today's college basketball.
That's a good point. I'll grant you that.
I do think healthy, they're at a good starting place with Matt Morrell and Deshaun Ruffin. You need Jamin Brakefield to take a step forward. Right? You need to be what Mike Krzyzewski saw in high school to bring him to Duke. You need him to be that. Clearly, they've got to get a big man. I'm a little over the whole Robert Allen changed everything. I do understand Robert Allen's injury affected what Ole Miss was able to do defensively, and he was a leader and an energy guy. But the trajectory of the season didn't change because of Robert Allen's injury.
Well, if it did, that's a problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Now, the compounding effect of Robert Allen and then Deshaun Ruffin, and it's not so much that Deshaun Ruffin missed a few games at the beginning and then played a few games and then came back. It's the fact that there was like a development time that was lost. Right? You need Deshaun Ruffin to learn how to be a Division I player in the first 6 weeks of the season and kind of take his lumps there so that when you make that turn toward conference play, he's still a freshman and he's still going to make mistakes, but he's kind of gone through some of the growing pains. He played a half and then missed 5 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it was, and then had to jump back into conference play. And so he had to kind of take some lumps along the way. Ole Miss got to go get a big man, right? I mean, they got to replace Nasir Brooks. They got to get somebody on the wing. They got to get another guard. And I was not being disrespectful when I didn't mention Jarkel Joyner in that group with Ruffin and Morrell, Jarkel Joyner can't be the most important piece. Jarkel Joyner's got to be a contributing piece. He's not big enough, and he's not consistent enough from the perimeter in making threes to be your most important player. And if he is, then yes, hey, Dad, you are delaying the inevitable. Games for State and Ole Miss, they had NBA players. Both schools have to hunt big game and find the Robert Woodards and Terrence Davises. You don't need an entire roster of those guys, just one, and it makes a massive difference.
It certainly helps having high-level basketball players on your team.
Doesn't hurt. But by that same token, I mean, State Molinar is a first-team All-SEC guard. I don't know if he's an NBA player or not, but he's a good enough player. I know that State talent wasn't the issue why State's not in the NCAA tournament this year. Well, you know that.
How many NBA players were on Ole Miss's 2013 team? What about their 2015 team?
Well,
it's not a requirement.
No, but it helps. I mean, I completely agree with the idea that it helps.
Of course. And I mean, you can do like what Arkansas has done and find those guys in the portal, too. A couple of things with this statement. First, the biggest issue I have with it is not the words of Kermit Davis or Keith Carter. So in fairness to both of them, this was probably written by an SID. However, this is the kind of stuff that somebody involved should have just simply deleted. Is it a big deal? No, it's not. It's just a press release. Most people probably didn't even read this far. After the quotes ended is probably when people stopped, because the rest, if you've read a press release before, you know the filler starts happening after the quotes. They start filling in just information to reach a number of words or whatever. But this was included in the here's why we're keeping our coach press release. In addition, here's a quote. In addition to narrow defeats in hard-fought battles at number 18 Tennessee, a game in which they lost by 6, versus Auburn, a game in which they lost by 9, and at Kentucky, a game in which they lost by 11. In total, the Rebels lost 5 games to net top 50 teams by 10 or fewer points. I'm sorry, this is major college sports. This is the SEC. Losing kind of close should never at any point be a selling point or a positive. Ever. It should never be a positive that you lost kind of close at home to Auburn in a 9-point game. Or you lost by double digits to a conference opponent. Or you played kind of close a few times to teams in the top 50. Again, I have a feeling that Keith Carter probably doesn't like that was in there. This is probably the work of an SID. But that should not be a selling point. Hey, guys, we lost a bunch of games, but some of them were close. We lost by 9 at home. Hey, remember that when we lost by 9 at home? It's major college sports. It's the SEC. Never use losing as a selling point, even if it's close. Because this is a wins and a losses business. And I had a friend text me earlier when he sent me the screenshot of that and said, what the heck is this? With different words. He reminded me, remember when Ole Miss played Alabama really tough in 2020 in football? Had a chance to win that game. Matt Corral played really well that night. Kenny Yeboah played really well that night. And they fought and scrapped and clawed with Alabama, who won the national championship. Walking off the field, the limited COVID crowd that was there cheered for their team as they were walking off the field after a loss. Remember what Lane Kiffin said after that?
I mean, thanks, but why are you clapping for me?
Why are you clapping for me? We lost the game. I mean, thanks, fans. I mean, I guess, but that's not what we're doing here. And I gotta go tell my team now that was not a good job. We lost the game. Compare those two mentalities of, why are you clapping for us? We lost. Stop. To, hey, remember that time we lost by 9 at home to Auburn? Don't use losing as a selling point. That should have just been deleted from this press release, not included. I understand what they're trying to do. Losing should never be celebrated or used as a selling point, ever.
I just think you and your friend are the only two people that read that far in the release.
It's
Probably so.
true.
Probably so, in fairness. And again, that was not a quote from Keith or Kermit Davis. But don't put that kind of stuff in there.
We can't help but tie the two schools together, right? C-Spire text line. If losing close is positive, then Ben Allen deserves a lifetime contract and his name on Humphrey Coliseum.